Hi everyone, this is the Bay Park. I did try and do this with Jamie before. Thanks Jamie for joining us again.
It's all right.
I've got the cameraman back. Last time we did this, I did the reverse in, so reversed on the right, and I explained about how to reverse on the left, but it was so busy I couldn't do the pull in. So this is the pull in Bay Park. So I'm going to teach you how to pull into a space on the right and the left in this video. As before, I'm going to do a drawn picture of it at the end so you can understand what all the reference points are as well. So when you're pulling into a bay, unlike the reverse in, you want to be as far away from the bay as physically possible. So if you drive down the road and you're turning right, in England you're going to expect to give way to the oncoming person, and it's the same when you're pulling into a bay. You want to be as far away from it. So when you're doing a bay park on the right, you're going to want to be very much on your side of the road, the correct side of the road. On the left, you're going to give way to oncoming people, and then you're going to pull into the bay. Now in a minute I'm going to talk about your reference points and all the rest of it, but the one thing that I need to stress again is that you need to be extremely careful about people coming out of the bays. So if you are going to be positioning to go into a bay with your reference point and there's somebody parked on the left and they're trying to get out of the bay, you're going to have to be very careful. Check to see if there's anyone sat inside the cars, because if you go right behind them, not only are you in danger of them driving into the back of you, or the side of you in this case, sorry, you're also, if they do see you, you're hindering them from getting out of the bay. I have had someone fail for that, so do be careful. Long term in your life, be ready with your horn. If anybody is reversing out of their space without looking properly, be ready to use your horn if you need to. So my car may start in a minute. When it does, because it's got the automatic stop. There it is. God, I know my car. It's like my own child. So I'll turn that off actually. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully go forward, and I'm going to be, the line of the bay that I'm actually driving into is the line that I need to get a reference point in the car. Now every car that you're driving is going to have a slightly different reference point, but the reference point of the line outside the car is going to be around about a quarter of the window. So you might know from the last video that you watched for the reversing that the reference point is half of the window, and you bring it down to something inside the car like the change of plastic, and that's your reference point. I'm afraid it's going to be different in the car that you're driving. Your driving instructor will have their own reference point. Have a look at that. Or if you're doing it by my reference points half, just bring your awareness into the car and choose a reference point there. So the reference point here will be quarter of the window. Now tall people, when you bring it down, have a reference point here. Normal people, because I call them, if they're the same height as me, they're normal, right? So tall people here, normal people, my height here, and I call that the top of the Toblerone because it looks like a Toblerone, top of the Toblerone, and then petite people will be over here. And that's kind of just a guide, so it depends on like where you're sat in the car, and how tall you are and stuff like that. Tall people, normal people, as in average me, and small people. So in a minute Jamie will be able to capture this reference point, I'm sure. So what I'm going to do is, I know my reference point is the top of the Toblerone, so I'm going to drive forward. I'm going to be very careful of oncoming cars, and I'm going to be careful about people reversing. Bikes, pedestrians, definitely pedestrians, because you're in a car park. Yeah, they may be just walking around, and other cars moving around, right? So what I need to do is do full observations all the way around, mandatory, and I need to look for danger. Nope, there's nothing going on, looks all good. So I'm just going to go forward in a straight line, and I'm going to be working with the bay that I'm going into. So the line is going to go on top of the Toblerone, so I'm going forward, and I'm going to get the line to go on top of the Toblerone from my perspective. Okay, so it's around about here. So from my perspective, I know Jamie's in a different place, sorry Jamie, but my perspective of the line coming in, I'm using my imagination, and the line to me looks like it's going on top of the Toblerone. I know this may be quite difficult because Jamie's in a totally different chair, but coming down it looks like it's on the top of the Toblerone. How are you doing, Jamie?
Just about, yeah.
I know you're sat in a different place, but from my perspective it looks like it's on the top of the Toblerone. This is good. This is my reference point. All right, is that okay, Jamie?
Yeah.
Cool. So from this point, it is optional to use a indicator at this stage. That's totally cool. If you didn't use one, it's not the end of the world, but it can be useful to use a signal at this stage. So just to teach it to you, I'm going to signal to the right. It is absolutely imperative that you check your blind spot to the right before you go in because of overtaking vehicles. Oncoming people have priority, and still be aware very much of the people coming out of the bays. Now at this stage, my line is on the top of the Toblerone, which is what my reference point quarter of the window is. What I'm going to do at this stage is I'm going to do extremely quick full lock to the right, all of it. So it's matching the last reference point, last method for the reverse in, which you might know because you may have already watched my video. Right, so full observations again, you must check your blind spot at this stage. It's a failable offence for you not to do it. Check your blind spot to make sure no one's overtaking you at this stage. Checking round, finding the bite, release the handbrake, and then full lock when you're not dry steering. Full lock, hold that in place, and hold your nerve now. Hold your nerve, maybe a couple of checks. Now when you're about half to 3/4 of the way in the bay, I recommend that you just stop. Get your head straight, right? Now you've got about 1.5 turns of the wheel to do. I call it the 0.5. It's not quite half of a steering wheel at this stage. Can you see on the steering wheel here, the word airbag is just like, that's basically the bottom of the steering wheel. What I need to do is I need to bring that down so the steering wheel looks normal at this stage. So when you're half to 3/4 of the way in the bay, around about 50 to 75% of the way in the bay, we need to get this down to the bottom. So check all the way around. You can stop here if you want to, but you don't have to. Finding the biting point, just so I don't dry steer, I'm going to release the handbrake. I'm going to do my first bit of steering. So first bit is steering there. Now as you can see, it looks straight, but it's not. I really need to hold my nerve now. I've got to hold my nerve until I appear straight. And then when I think that I'm straight, I come to a stop. Okay, that's my straight mark. And then if you look back at the steering wheel now all I need to do from this moment is I've got one more turn to make. So I need the airbag sign to go all the way round, and then it will come down to the bottom again, and then that will complete my manoeuvre. All right, so I look around, see if it's okay, and then do one turn to make it normal and straight, like that. Okay, and then it's handbrake neutral. All right, so at this stage you would need to check the manoeuvre. All right, so you need to check. Now I can see that I'm in the lines, so that's fine, and that is a pass. If I can see the lines on both sides, I'm okay. But if you're over the line, then you must reverse out. You've got 3 fixes on this manoeuvre. All right, you're allowed to use them if you need to. Now, like I said in my last video, when you come into the bay, if the examiner says to you, "Are you finished?" right, this is not a particularly good sign. If they say, "Are you finished?" you're probably not. Okay, you may have to fix it if you hear that. Or if you stop and there's an icy silence in the car and there's no "drive on when you're ready" statement, there's probably something wrong with it. Okay, you may have to fix it. You've got 3 fixes if you need it. You just drive out and drive back in. All right, so if you look at it and you go, "Yeah, I can see the lines," then you're fine. If the examiner is unsure about whether you're in the lines, he's going to ask you to go handbrake neutral and stop the manoeuvre, and stop the movement of the car safely, and then they're going to walk around the car. I call it the walk of shame. So make sure that you're going to survive the walk of shame, right? And just make sure that you look all the way around and see, "Yep, I'm in the lines, it's okay," right? When they walk around, they have to see that you're in the lines. If you're not, unfortunately, it's too late. You can't do any fixing after they've walked around the car. It's done, right? So make sure that you fix it before they ask you to go handbrake neutral. If you need to fix it, it's ridiculously easy. You can see that I've actually got a little bit extra space on the left. For my test, I wouldn't have to fix this because I'm in the line. I can see the line there, but I am closer to the right-hand side. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to make it more perfect. So I can see the line there, but I wouldn't, if I was doing my test, I would not finish. I would not change this manoeuvre because I've already passed. But long term, let's fix it. So
I just want to interject here because I don't think I made it perfectly clear. On your test, if you can see the lines on both sides of the car, you have passed. Because you're nervous, I always say to my students, don't change it unless you absolutely have to. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you can see the lines on both sides, you've passed. Only start thinking about changing your manoeuvre if you're actually over the line or on the line and you're worried about it. That's when you need to change it. Now, I appreciate in life that it is better for you to be in a better position with more space on the left and the right, because when people open their doors or when you open the door, you need to be further away from the car. But test-wise, if you can see the lines on both sides, I strongly recommend that you're just really happy with it and you just leave it there, guys. There's enough to worry about. If you can see the lines, you've passed. Just be happy and get on to the next thing, okay?
I look all the way around, I check if it's okay. Now, all I need to do is make sure that there's absolutely no one around, and then I reverse back until I can go back as far as possible without going in the bays behind. So I reverse back, and I recommend that you stay in a straight line. Unless you're very talented at knowing where to put the wheel, I just recommend going back in a straight line, okay? Because it's more complicated to steer in reverse unless you're very talented and you're really clued up about what you're doing. So check round, go back in a straight line, and don't do anything with your steering. Even if you go out in a weird position, that's fine. Go back as far as you can without entering the bays behind. And then at this stage, you can then look at the bay in front of you and you can decide, how do I need to steer? So I look at it and then I think to myself, yeah, I'm going to steer to the left to heel this manoeuvre. So I check round both sides, release the handbrake, go as slow as possible. Yep, steer to correct the steering, then steer to the right to correct the back of the car. So I did the front of the car first, then I've steered the other way to correct the back, and now I steer straight. All right, so just to repeat that system again, I steered to the left to correct it, that does the front of the car, then I steered to the right to correct the back of the car, and then I steered straight. So it's on, mirror to the other side, exactly the same amount, and then straight. Okay, now this is a much better position to finish the manoeuvre. So I can see that there's a little bit of space between me and the line now, and there I'm much more centered in here. Now test-wise, I didn't need to fix it, but if I was leaving my car here all day, this would be much better. All right, so that's how to do it if you're on the left side of the road. Now, it's going to be exactly the same on the other side, but I'm just going to quickly do that as well. Coming out of the bay, you are marked for this as well. All right, so you check all the way around. Now he's going to pretend that there's cars in all bays. You cannot drive forward, you cannot leave the bay by going through the other one and leaving. Don't do that, guys. The examiner's going to pretend that there's cars in all the bays. You must reverse out of this bay. Now, if there was expensive cars on the left and the right, like Teslas and Porsches and stuff, we don't want to hit them, right? So we need to take half of the car out of the bay first, and then we steer. So we must go out in a straight line first, and then steer. So you check round everywhere. When you reverse, you mostly look out the back window. So you look out the back, and then I recommend that you sit on the exit line, so the end of the line. Okay, so about now, if Jamie can see, I'm sat on the end of the line. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I'm sat on the end of the line, this is my steering point, so it's safe for me to steer. So I check all the way around, see if it's okay. And then when I release handbrake without dry steering, now I do full lock, and that would prevent me from hitting the cars in the bays on the left and the right. Looking out the back as much as possible. Now, if you notice this, Jamie, I'm at a completely weird angle, which is totally normal. All right. So you can see that I am not straight or in the new road, and that's okay. So now I just use first gear. I check all around with absolutely excellent observations from this funny position all the way around, and then I just do the steering, very slow car, quick wheel to exit. Okay, so you're not going to come out and be in an excellent position. You're going to be all like weirdly diagonal there, and that's okay, that's totally normal. But you're not allowed to go into the bays behind, because he will just pretend that there is cars in all the bays. Okay, so let me show you the one that you have to do on the left side, which is pretty much the same. I'll try and do this a little bit quicker because you've got the idea of it all. So, now, when you're doing the one into the left, you're going to need to do something called a swan neck, which means you need to change your position. So we've done a video on the outside of the car, which I'll probably cut to at this stage. The art of the editing is great. Right, so what I need to do is I need to check everywhere Now I need to, if necessary, go on the complete right side of the road like I did in the cut, and then you pull into the left. You can do it from a center position. It's easier if you do it completely on a swan neck, completely on the other side of the road, as long as there's no one coming out of the bays, and you're going to have to be super careful about people coming towards you, so you need to really check to see if there's anything going on, because it's not your priority to go on the other side of the road. If you decide to do it from a center position, you may have waiters, cars waiting for you. Make the waiters wait if that's the case, or you may have creepers. You do a bit and they creep towards you, they're being a bit creepy. Oh, you've got a creep, yeah, all that stuff like I said before in another video. If you do a full swan neck, which is what I teach, be very, very careful of the people on coming and coming out of the bay. But if you do a full swan neck, then it's really useful in my opinion, because when you're setting up all your reference points and everything, people can look at you, see that you're a learner, and they can just drive past you and overtake you. So they're going to be like super like happy that they've got the space and they don't have to wait for the learner doing the maneuver, right? So I teach it on the full swan neck, but you can do it from a center position. You cannot do it from the left side. It's impossible. Pulling into a bay on the left side is impossible on the left. You have to either do it from a center position or a right position. If you pull into the left, you're just going to cross all the lines. It is impossible. You'd crash into the imaginary cars on the left, or the real cars in your life. So you must change position. So this is how it works. So I'm going to park on the left. I need to be as far away from the bay as physically possible, unlike the reversing where you need to be right next to the reverse, which you remember from the other video if you've watched it. So checking all the way around to see if there's any danger, especially the blind spot. I move over to the right. So I steer to the right, being closer to the opposite bays. If I was to use a signal, I would signal to the left now. Yeah, I wouldn't do it any earlier than that because I need to do a swan neck to the right, okay? So I'm now driving on the wrong side of the road, right? Okay, now I'm going to get my reference point, okay? So I need to get the line to go on the top of the Toblerone, right? Or whatever reference point I'm using. It tends to be the same on the other side of the car, but I have noticed over the years that sometimes this reference point can slightly vary on both sides. So you need to work out, you need to be with your instructor and work out what your reference points are, or in your own car, you need to work them out, okay? So I'm going to get my reference point on top of the Toblerone. So the line on the outside is now going on Jamie's side, and it's going to go on the silver bit. I don't know whether that's possible to pick up. Okay, cool. So I've got my reference point. Okay, my signal has kind of come off, but I can put that back on in a sec. Okay, so I can put my signal on here, and it is absolutely essential that I look to the left blind spot, because, you know, somebody undertaking me or coming up going past me would be extremely dangerous. So I check all the way around, see if it's okay. And then at this point, I then do full lock to the left. Now, I go into the bay around about 1/2 to 3/4, and I recommend, you don't have to, but I recommend a slight stop at this point, right? Okay, so at this point, I'm going to do the 0.5 of steering. So I'm going to bring the airbag bit where it looks like the bottom to the bottom, and then I'm going to hold my nerve, right? So I'm half to 3/4 of the way in the bay. Then I go forward a little bit, and I take that to the bottom so the steering wheel looks straight. Now I know in the back of my mind that I've only got one more turn to do. So I'm going to go forward until I feel like I'm totally straight. So I need to hold my nerve now. I need to hold my nerve, I need to hold my nerve, I need to hold my nerve. And then at this point, I'm going to stop because I appear straight. So now I've got one whole turn to make. All right, so I check round, see if it's okay. And then I'm going to do the one turn and then totally straight. All right. And you can see in the mirror there, that in the line there, perfect. Perfect. Yep. Now at this stage, again, if I needed to fix this manoeuvre, I totally can. 3 fixes, please don't worry about it. If you needed to fix your manoeuvre, then you just fix it. So you check both sides and you're like, am I in the lines? And you're like, yes, I am. It doesn't matter whether you're perfect or you're too close to the left or too close to the right. Right, if you look in the mirrors and you can see the lines, we're all good, okay, it's fine. You lift yourself up to look in the big mirror if you haven't got small mirrors, or you use the small mirrors, or you can even safely look around and open the door and go, I can see the line. All right, so any of those methods are fine. If you are over the line, you need to fix it. If you get the "Are you finished" line or the "I see silence," you haven't passed, you have to fix it. So at this stage, you check around, see if it's okay, make sure it's all right. Then you reverse back in a totally straight line. Remember, you do not enter the bays behind. You just go back enough to see the bay in front. All right, and then you can look at the bay in front of you, and then you can basically steer into it and make any changes that you need to. There. And that's it. Perfect. All right, and then it's handbrake neutral. Then you do a final double check, and if you need to use your extra fixes, then you use your extra fixes. I will say at this stage that if you do fixing, it's like you get one minor and you buy 3 fixes. All right, so if you go out and do a fix, you get a minor. But if you use 2 more fixes, you don't get 3 minors. You get 1 minor for 3 fixes. All right, so don't worry about it. If you fixed it once, you may as well go out another couple of times because you've already got your minor anyway. Don't worry about it. Your manoeuvre is marked out of control, observation and accuracy. Okay, so your observations has to be amazing. If you're going forward, check your blind spots, make sure that you're okay. And then if you're reversing, you must look out the back window as much as possible. Look after your observations, and then the control can be fixed because the accuracy is the last thing he's looking for. All right, guys, so if you need to fix the manoeuvre, fix it. I wish you all the luck in the world. Good luck with your test. Okay guys, this is the drawn version of it all. So I'm going to start with the right in. Okay, so let's just say that you're in a car park which has the lane on the left to go up here and the people can come down here. You can get one-way car parks, but let's just keep it like as well, the trickiest version that you can, right? So here you are on your side of the road, just coming up. Now you'll remember, if you're watching this and you've watched the whole thing, you remember that you must be very, very careful about people reversing out of here. So if there are any cars around here on your test, try and look through the glass and see whether there's anyone actually in the cars, because if they're coming out of there, it can be extremely dangerous. Now, when you're going into one of the bays on the right, the oncoming people have priority. So you must give way to oncoming people first. So this may mean that you stop before you go in to let them drive past you. All right, be very careful about people reversing out on either side, but especially on this left side here. So when you're coming up to your bay park and you're going to pull in to the bay park on the right, first of all, you need to just pick a bay. You need to know which one you're working with, because if you pick your bay, then you can number the lines, line number 1, line number 2, all right? Because that's really important, because you're going to need to get line number 1 in your reference point. Which I'll tell you more of, but obviously you'll remember that that's a quarter of the window. So as you're coming up, you do mirrors to the right, signal to the right, yeah? And to be honest with you, it is optional, that signal, but it is quite helpful to have that signal on so people know what you're doing. So here you are, you've gone mirrors right, signal right, yeah? It is optional, it depends on how many people are around, okay? So as you're coming up, you're going to go up very, very carefully, and then as you look out of the window, this line is going to go on your personal reference point, yeah? So that's you looking out of the window. This line is going to go around about a quarter in on your driver window. Okay, now obviously I've tried to really explain that on the video just now, but that line goes around about a quarter depending on how tall you are and all the rest of it. Okay, so at this point, I would recommend that you stop and make sure that this is good, because if this is good, you're more likely just to get in first time. Okay, now at this point, you can stop, yeah, you can have a good look at it and make sure it's okay. You're aware of these people, you're aware of oncoming people. And then when you're like, yeah, that's cool, I'm going to go in, that's cool. So at this point, you find your biting point, and then very slow car, but extremely quick steering. Next, you're going to check your blind spot to make sure that no one's overtaking you. That is critical, all right?
So absolutely critical that you check before you go in, otherwise it could be very dangerous. So you check your blind spot here, no one oncoming, no one around. Then when you release your handbrake, within the first literally half a metre really, or up to a metre, you want to do full lock to the right, all of your steering. Yeah, you want to be moving slightly because you don't want to dry steer, because that's damaging to the tyre itself and the steering mechanism. But you want to do full lock to the right as quickly as possible within that first half metre, maybe a metre, but that's it. So full lock has been achieved half a metre to a metre in. And then, to be honest with you, you don't have to do much. You're just waiting. And what you want to do is wait until you get around about 50 to 75% in. I've noticed that around about 75% is nice, but yeah, 3/4 in, yeah, 50 to 75% in. I just call it the 75 mark, it's fine. So when you've got to around about sort of 75% in, you're going to want to start thinking about straightening your wheel, because you've got full lock on to the right. Now, from full lock, it's around about 1.5 turns the other way. So I call it the 0.5. So you've got the 0.5 here for like the first sort of half a turn, which you'll remember from my video. And then when you're beautifully straight, then you've got one more turn to make. So that's the 0.5, and then you wait a bit and then you do the next turn. So you've got full lock in, you go in, no one to give way to, no one to worry about. You go in, 75% in, you can stop if you like, that's fine. So you won't be finished at this stage. Make sure that you're not finished, because that would be a bit too late. Just get into the point where you're like, yeah, I'm in this bay, I'm doing well, but now I need to start thinking about steering straight. So at this point, you turn to the left a little bit so your steering wheel appears normal, and try not to do that on dry steering. Make sure you're moving slightly so your steering wheel will now appear straight, and then hold your nerve. Hold your nerve with this new bit of steering that you've got until you're lovely and straight, okay? And at this point, you can stop again. That's okay, you can stop again and you can look at it and be like, am I happy with this? Is this okay? And if the answer is yes, then you can move a smidge forward and do one whole turn to the left. And then there you are, you're finished. You've got lovely straight wheels like that, and you can stop handbrake neutral. At this point, you can look out of your windows to see if you look the same as the other parked cars that are nearby, all right? Because then you'll know whether you've driven into the space enough, if you're lucky enough to have them. Otherwise, you can just use your mirrors, or you can even safely, if you've looked around, just open the door and have a look. Now, remember, this does not have to be right first time at all. You've got 3 fixes. Please don't forget, this does not have to be perfect first time, all right? You'll be nervous, it doesn't matter. So as you come up, if you go in there and you think that you're over the line, then you need to fix it, okay? If you can see the line, fine. Just as long as you can see the line on both sides in your mirrors or your little mirrors, or you've safely opened the door and you can see it, yeah? Then if you're in the lines, just leave it. You're fine, you're done. But if you're over the line, or if you're on the line and you get the "are you finished" line or the icy silence, remember that you're going to want to reverse out safely and carefully. Hugely good observations, because people are still using this road here. Hugely good observations. Reverse yourself back as far as you can without entering those bays behind. Then look at the bay in front of you. Just look at it. And then very slow car, check both ways, and then drive with the correct steering to get into the bay. It is quite a simple fix, that, because you just literally look at it and then you drive into it. And you can do that 3 times, okay? So it's fine. So you just go out and back in again, okay? And then that's it. And then when you reverse out, remember, when you're done and the examiner's like, thank you, drive on when you're ready. Remember to take half of the car out first before you steer, so you don't hit the imaginary cars on the left and the right, even if they're not there. If you have parked with people next to you, you would even more have to make sure that this is perfect. So half the car out first, stop, and then full lock out and then down, okay? So that's how to do it when you go right into the bay. But of course, you're going to be going left in as well. So new picture, just try and ignore that from this picture here. So here you are, you're in your car park and the examiner says, pick a bay. You can, and yeah, I should say actually that he will just say, please pick a bay for you to reverse into. All right. So if you like the one on the left, do the one on the left. If you like the one on the right, do the one on the right. It doesn't matter. It is extremely rare that the examiner will go, that one, I want you to go in that one. I have had an examiner do that once. I don't really know what that was about, but most of the time they say pick a bay for you to pull into or reverse into, either way. And then you have the choice about which side you're going to do it on. So obviously we're talking about the pull in only here, but that would be the same for reversing in as well. So whichever one you prefer. Excuse me. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into one of the ones on the left side. Now, we can't just drive into the left. That is just impossible. So if you did that, you just cross all the lines and you just hit all the cars. So depending on the size of the car park itself, you might be able to go into a middle position and then go in if the car park was wide enough, or you're going to have to go completely swan-necked onto the wrong side of the road, go up and then go in from a swan-necked position. Swan neck meaning that you go like this, which is reminiscent of a swan neck, right? A bit curvy. So as you do this, you have to be extremely careful about people reversing out of these bays, and you need to be extremely careful about people coming down here, because this is not your priority. So you're going to have to do all those extra checks. So you do mirrors, then you do blind spot, and then if it's safe from all of the different reasons and no one's overtaking you, then you're going to go safely over to the wrong side of the road, yeah? Then you're going to drive up very carefully. You've chosen your bay to work with, so you've numbered the lanes 1 and 2. You go very, very carefully up in a straight line, and then if necessary and if you want to, you can come to a stop, which as a driving instructor, I do recommend. Personally, I do. You don't have to, but you can, yeah? Which is fine. You can even burn some time off your test if you do these stop points, right? So as you look out the window, this line needs to be a quarter of the window in. Yeah, your own personal reference point. So it's about a quarter of the window in. In my car, it's on the door handle that you use to open the door, right? Which I've discussed in the actual video there. And then at this point, you must check your left blind spot, because people can actually get past you, all right? So just the same as before, you must make sure that no one's overtaking you if you've done a total swan neck, or whatever position you're in, you must check if there's a bike, pedestrian, car coming up on your left side in this case, or your right side if you're talking about the other side, all right? So you check your blind spot there, and then of course you do full lock to the left. Within the first half metre to a metre, you've achieved all of your steering. And at this point, you shouldn't really need to do anything. Just waiting. You can do some extra checks for good observation at this point. And then just wait until you're like 50 to 75% into the bay. I quite like the 75% mark, but 50% works, as I said before. So when you're about 75% in the bay, you're nearly done, but not quite. So you'll still be at this like funny little position. And from the full lock position, you've got 1.5 turns to do the other way. So that's why I call it the 0.5 there, and then the circle, because that's 1.5, yeah? So when you're into the 75%, you move a smidge and you do your 0.5, okay? So you turn it then to the right, 0.5. So the steering wheel looks straight at this point, and then hold your nerve. Let the car continue to go forward until it appears completely straight, and you can stop again if you want to, all right? At this stopped point, you can be like, is it good? Do I like it? Yes, I do. And then just move a little bit forward and then do the next quick turn to the right, and then that's done. I often say to my students, like, act as if when you go into the bay, that the bay is like got treacle in it, that it's got super glue in it. Go so slow at this point, because if you go a bit too fast, this is where the student will be wonky, because they don't do this 1.5 quick enough. And then they end up wonky. So really slow it down, especially in the bay. You're not going to be, making anyone wait for you anyway. So who cares, and just like burn a bit of time off your test anyway. So when you go in, again, stop, have a look at the other cars through the window to see if you've pulled in enough, because obviously you do need to be in the bay enough. So have a look out the windows there, and then look in either the small round mirrors if your instructor has got them, or the big mirror, or check very carefully by looking around and opening your door to see if you're in the lines. And then if you're not in the lines,
you would then reverse back. If it's safe to do so with excellent observations, you'd reverse back, don't go in the bays behind, look at the bay in front of you, and then drive forward to make any corrections you need 3 times. You can do it 3 times. It's extremely generous. There are so many fixes. Most of my students, when they find out that there's 3 fixes, relax. They go, really? 3 fixes? That's a lot. Yes, it is a lot. If you keep calm and your observations are good, then there's no reason really why you can't get in there in the end, all right? So if you're fixing, you fix towards the gap. So if you're, let's say you're over the left line there, yeah, so if you come in and you're like over this left line, you're going to have a huge gap on the right. So as you reverse back in a straight line, you need to steer towards the gap. So you'd steer right first because you need to close that gap. So you steer right, then you steer left because you need the back of the car to follow your new correction, and then you go straight. So it would be right, left, straight. So it's a bit of both steering. All right. So guys, I really hope that picture helps. Again, it is a bit of a scribble, but a lot of the time when I draw this in the car, my students are like, can I have that bit of paper? And of course you can. So anyway, if you find this useful, then great. I hope that the video plus this picture really helps you and that you understand all of your observations. Remember, it's key to have excellent observations, really good. Pedestrians are everywhere, bikes, yeah. They may be cycling very quickly around these car parks and, of course, overtaking vehicles. So do really, really make sure that your observations are incredible. And then if you need your fixes, clearly, just fix it. All right, guys, thanks very much. I hope this helps and good luck with your driving test.